Welcome. We're here today with Thomas Song from Empower LA and Pamela Thornton, who's the chair of the Harbor Gateway North Neighborhood Council. And Pamela is also a member of the League of Women Voters Torrance area. She's actually our program chair and our environmental chair. So welcome both of you.
Thank you so much.
My name's Athena Paquette, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters Torrance area, and I'm your host today with Learn with the League. Learn with the League is a series of presentations to educate the public on the different parts of government and all that entails. So today's episode is to learn about the neighborhood councils and of Los Angeles and their role to help our communities. So we're going to start with Thomas. And if you have questions, please type them in the chat box, and I'll be sure to interject as I can. So, Mr. Song, can you tell us a little bit about what the neighborhood council is, how it came about, just kind of the history of that?
How long do you have?
Well, you have about 20 minutes because we want people to be able to ask questions.
I'll try to be faster than that, okay? Because I'm going to condense, how should we say, like 20 years, 2018 or 20 years into a little segment here. But I'll take a shot, okay? Just a little background for myself. I am, how should we say, one of the more original members that's still part of that's still working here.
Right.
So you've seen me for a while here. And so I've seen the evolution of the neighborhood council system from the beginning till now. So it's very, very exciting. So to give you a little background for the viewers here, just like with a lot of with anything, change happens a lot when people are not happy. Change happens a lot when people don't like the way the things are. And that's how, if we want to think about the neighborhood council system, that's how the system kind of got started. Let me explain. Back in 1999, there was a movement from different parts of the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles goes from the San Fernando Valley all the way down to the San Pedro area, covering many square mileage. I don't have that in front of me, but at least 4 point so million people living, working in the area here. Now, the certain parts of the city at that time, they were feeling a little upset, dissatisfied with the lack of the delivery of city services. Anyway, they felt that they weren't getting their streets clean, the potholes weren't getting fixed on time, they weren't getting their delivery of services. And most of this area was from the San Fernando Valley, and some of it in the San Pedro area. And there was a movement at that time decided, hey, look, we want to keep the city together, and we want to show that we can provide a new way of making government, getting government closer to the people by creating these what's called neighborhood councils. And neighborhood councils are they have the ability to hear the voice and concern of the stakeholders, and I'll explain stakeholders later, the folks in that area, and also pass along that advice, the priorities, the needs of that community to the local officials, to the local city departments on this is what you should be spending your funds on, or this is what you should prioritize the delivery of services. So there was a movement out there saying, hey, look, we have this new system that's out there, but guess what? It has to be voted on through city charter. So in 1999, it was put on the ballot to create this new city charter to say, hey, we have, once approved, then there will be a new system, citywide system of neighborhood councils. And then so lo and behold, in 1999, the voters voted for it, and that charter, new charter passed, and then there it is. Then now the call for creation of this neighborhood council system then, okay? So with that creation, so I'll take a quick pause. So with that creation, does not mean that automatically there are neighborhood councils. We currently have 97 neighborhood councils throughout the city of Los Angeles. When we first started this back in 1999, there was no neighborhood councils. With the creation of this new charter called for creation of a couple other departments and entities. Number one, it called for the creation of our department called the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, affectionately called DONE. Okay, and we've heard all the acronyms. Okay, getting things done is done. We're so overdone. Wow, done. Yes. Okay, but we are the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, and we were charged. And we are charged. We were charged with, hey, look, now there's a system in place for these neighborhood councils. Let's go get them. Now what? Right? So along with, and I'll come back to our department, but so the charter created our department. It called for the allowance to create neighborhood councils, but also called for the creation of a advisory body called the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. So the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners are a citizen-appointed group appointed by the mayor from one person from each of the 7 planning areas. And like I said, that's appointed by the mayor. What are the 7 planning areas? So you have the North Valley, the South Valley, Central area, East area, the Harbor area, the West area, and also the what's the other one I missed? South, the Northeast, I think. Like, so I hope like, I'm sorry if I forget to those listening. I forget. Sorry, but then basically those 7 represent the 7 planning areas, and they were charged with at that time to, once the neighborhood councils were ready to come before them, they had the ability to either approve yes or no on neighborhood council becoming what's called certified as a neighborhood council. Okay. So once again, the purpose of neighborhood councils really comes down, and the purpose of the whole system comes down to 2 things that the listeners can, the watchers, the people watching can understand, is to make government more responsive to local needs. Its ability for government, hey, we would like you to prioritize your resources here, there. It's an advisory body, but also it allows to get more folks involved. Okay, so like I think that vein will run through, and this is something we always kind of let our neighborhood council know, that it's not that, yes, it's a big scope, but if you could think about those 2 purposes, then you're on the right track. And along those 2 things, there's different ways to get involved from both tracks. Going back to the history, so then when we hear then back in '99, congratulations, here we are. Let's get it all formed. Some of the things that we're looking for when forming a neighborhood council, we have to, and also along with the new charter, they call for a plan. In the plan, that explains a little of the skeleton, the framework of what the neighborhood council should be. So what the neighborhood councils have to do, a couple of things. You have to define your boundaries, okay? And that you can't have, and east, west, north, south, right? And however you wanted to define that. And along those boundaries, you have to have at least 20,000, minimum of 20,000, what's called stakeholders. Stakeholders are defined as those who live, work, or own property, or they have some type of community interest in the area. For example, if your kid attends the PTA, that you have a stake in that area. Your kid attends school, you're part of a nonprofit group that you're a member of the nonprofit group. You have a stake in the area, even though you don't live in that area. Okay? That's what a stakeholder is. And interesting about neighborhood councils, which is a really way to get more folks civically engaged, is that you don't have to be a citizen to be a member of the neighborhood council.
A U.S. citizen, you mean?
Yes, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to be. Yeah, so that way, for folks, the idea is the more involved, the more merrier, because non-citizens are stakeholders too. They care about the community, the neighborhoods as well. So it has to have boundaries. You have boundaries. We need stakeholders. We also need the geographic. It has to be at least for 20,000. But there are certain cases where you can have neighborhood councils less than 20,000. We have a couple of neighborhood councils that's less than 20,000. But there's certain.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, there's certain cases that you're allowed to. If you're bound by a historically, identified area, or if you're, there's a couple other cases too, but I'm not going to speak too much on that. But you can't they're there. So as our department, we were charged to go out there. At that time, there was a fight for boundaries, right? Sometimes because you can't. Another thing, you cannot have more than one neighborhood council representing an area.
How
So
big of an area approximately are you talking?
no, a geographic boundary. For example, you can't have, for example, Harbor Gateway North. You can't have two neighborhood councils occupying that one area. So it's one neighborhood per geographic area, like 20,000 people. Like,
Oh.
well, yeah, doesn't you don't define the area. It's really for example, Watts is the square mile is like 2.2 miles.
Mm.
The within Watts is like over I think 40,000 stakeholder people there, too. So it doesn't really matter. We don't look at okay, it has to be this big or that big and type of right. So during that, so then if there were cases, and there were, of two groups interested in kind of getting that area, right? We bring them together. We try to do a little discussion to see if you could, give a little, take a little, whatever, right? Yeah. And then if that doesn't happen, then each of them will turn their application in together, and the we'll make a recommendation, and the board of neighborhood commissioners will then vote yes or no on that becoming a neighborhood council.
Mm-hmm. So the commissioners, if I understood your what you were saying about the commissioners, there's these 7 like umbrellas that go over a certain zone, and they okay.
Planning area. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So those citizens what are they doing? What's their relationship with the neighborhood council? How are they interacting, or what are they deciding, or what are they there for? Those guys.
Well, the commissioners.
Yes.
During the phase of creation, their main priority was to come together to approve the neighborhood council, to certify the neighborhood councils.
And what do they do now?
Right now, they oversee. They oversee some. They come up with some policies. And they also see some. For example, they created like a code of civility. A code of conduct policy. Believe it or not, people don't get along sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Councils have.
I've heard of that.
No, you never had any conflicts on your board, right? I'm kidding. That should be nice. Okay. No, so then they're the oversight committee. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. Okay, so let's just say that we have a neighborhood council. There's no overlapping, and they're ready to go. And they have to fill out. It's not so much they just get together, they come to the commission, and we want a neighborhood council. Here it is. Voila. Right. Neighborhood councils are they're still part of the city entity too. Okay. So certain rules and guidelines that they still need to follow there. But one thing, so then when they are ready to become a neighborhood council, I think your council did it. Well, all councils had to do this. They have to fill out an application. In the application, they gotta define their boundaries. They have to define using the census, defining these are the stakeholders in our area. They have to do a signature petition on yes, we are interested in becoming a neighborhood council, or having this group become a neighborhood council. Now, the other thing that a lot of neighborhood councils do is also they must create what's called bylaws, and in that bylaws gives a structure of the goals of the neighborhood councils, the board seats. Okay, the board seats are very it's not uniform in all neighborhood councils. It's very specific to each neighborhood council. For example, if a neighborhood council has a lot of schools, you might have more school seats represented. If a neighborhood council has more nonprofits, you might have more nonprofits represented. But but no one per the plan, but no one stakeholder group can have more than 50% majority on that board. Okay? So then a lot of boards, they have what's called at-large seats, which means anybody could come in and join the board too. So we look at the structure, we look at the petitions, for the signatures, we look at the boundaries, we looked at the justification for wanting to become, how much outreach they did did they go to community meetings? How did people know about this? And we look at the bylaws. The bylaws are supposed to be fair and equitable and represent the best representation of the stakeholders in that area. So what happens then is they turn the application to us, we do a review of it, and we make a recommendation to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, and then they go ahead and they decide yes or no to approve the neighborhood councils. So
you guys are still, sorry to interrupt, but so you guys are still considering adding some on. If a neighborhood or a group wanted to become a neighborhood council, there's still room room at the table to get your neighborhood council?
Yeah, well,
Or is
right
there
now
a cutoff?
right. You're opening. We're right now. I think we're getting kind of close to, so the surprising thing of all this. What's for me myself? Let me just before I answer that, what I find kind of amazing is that we have 97 of these neighborhood councils. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
that's approved, and 97 of these neighborhood councils. That's consistently. If you break it down this way, on a monthly basis, coming together at least once a month because they have monthly meetings, right? With it's 97 different communities, 97 different areas, trying their best to do, try to be representative of their communities, making good decisions, getting more empowering their communities. So I find that fascinating to start with. Okay, so to go back to your question about, are there room for other neighborhood councils? We've opened up. We had this new process, a subdivision process that's opened up. That we open up for a certain amount of time per year. That up to 5 neighborhood councils can apply for to subdivide from their current neighborhood council. So but then that's another lengthy process too. It's not just a simple, okay, we want to have our own council, and then, that's another kind of a lengthy process too. So in one sense, the 97 neighborhood councils cover almost the majority of the city of Los Angeles already. There's that option of doing subdivision, but it's not. It's very limited in terms of time and how many can apply per year too.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
So how many board members typically are there on a city council?
Currently right now we have, with the 97 neighborhood councils, just give you perspective, overall we have 1,800, around 1,800 plus board members.
Okay.
So that's not including stakeholders, per the bylaws though. So, stakeholders who are not on the board can also be members of the committee too, be voting members of the committee too. I don't know if yours has that. So on the average, I don't know how big yours is. On 15, we've had boards that are like not to 9. We have some boards that are up to 30.
Wow.
So yeah. So imagine public comment on that. For those ones, right? No, so your board's like 15, right? You're 17 seats.
Yeah, that's a big number. That's a
It's
pretty
a
big
big number, right? Well, it's a big area too, right?
Yeah.
The other component of the so let me go back to a little bit. So those are the board members there. After the neighborhood councils have been certified, okay, there's still no board members, right? Because you have the seats now defined, but who's on those seats? Because the neighborhood commissioners, they don't certify. Okay, when you turn an application, you don't certify. Okay, Pamela, you're on the seat already. Your friend's on this seat. You're this seat. The seats are listed. So what we had to do is that in their bylaws, there's also an elections process, in which just like any other elections, they have to go out, get candidates, do outreach, recruit, and get people to join the board. And let me ask you, who do you think was the first kind of our election administrators back in the days, back in 1999, 2000?
The citizens, I suppose.
The League of Women Voters.
That's true.
The administrators of the election.
I don't know who could do that.
No, we asked the League of Women Voters to come and administer the elections because
Okay.
I think the league has some experience
Good
with
to
those.
know. Probably the LA League.
I don't know. Yeah. No, but then once the neighborhood councils become certified, then our department comes in, and then we would, after elections, and then we help provide meeting assistance, technical support, trainings, and just to help the best practices, connecting with other city departments, working with the council offices. So we provide the kind of the day-to-day operations and some of the strategic planning of neighborhood councils ask us to help support. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the component with joining these boards at that time, because there was a little bit more funds, but we're getting back to it. Right? Each neighborhood council has, and Pamela can speak to this, $50,000 of taxpayers' funds, not to buy a car or go to Vegas. Okay. Okay, but then they have the $50,000 that when we first started to do operations, outreach. Once the operations, hiring administrative staff, website design. Were there websites back in there was no Facebook back in 1999. Okay, administrating Facebook, but also outreach, community improvement projects, neighborhood councils are allowed to give, they can't give monies away, but they can give what's called neighborhood purpose grants. So schools, not public schools and nonprofits can apply for these neighborhood purpose grants to support their programs. And so, yeah.
Wow.
And then so that 50,000 has fluctuated up and down due to budget cuts and restraints. Now it's back up to 42,000.
Is that per year?
Per fiscal year. Meaning that it's not January through December. It's July 1st to June 30th. So we're coming up to in 3 more months. This fiscal year 2017-2018 will be ending. We'll be starting July 1st, fiscal year 2018 to 2019. So they have access to those funds as well. Yeah. And then I think some of your questions is how do they get elected? Is that when they go through? Well, you're asking how long are the terms? You know, some neighborhood council have terms of 4 years, but most of them I think are 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and in between that, because sometimes people don't want to stay in that duration due to either family issues or just busy with school. That if there are vacancies on the board, in the bylaws there's a vacancy process that will allow a stakeholder to join midterm.
By appointment.
By appointment.
Oh, I was just going to ask if it's election or by appointment. So the current board could appoint someone to join them.
Right. Well, that'll be ratified by the majority of the board members there usually. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. And what's your position with Empower LA? How do you assist in your job description or in what you do on a daily basis? What types of things do you do to support them?
Before, when I'm in the day-to-day kind of operations, I'm currently had an opportunity to now oversee the South LA and the Harbor area neighborhood councils. So I support a team that on a day-to-day level oversees and supports the neighborhood councils. But generally, is that we have a commitment, and for our staff, just like I said, in terms of the funding, right? The budget cut, there were budget cuts where our ratio, we try to provide a very healthy ratio of our one neighborhood empowerment advocate to the neighborhood council system. When we had budget cuts back in 2006 or so, our ratio was like one of us to 15 to 16 neighborhood council. So how much can you support? Can we really do, right? So it's good right now that we have a ratio, at least for the South LA and the Harbor area, where we have at least one NEA to 5 or 6 neighborhood councils. So it's a lot more.
Pretty good, yeah. Pretty good.
So with that, our commitment is that we have to be at all your meetings. Try to attend all the monthly meetings. At the board to provide support in case there's questions or just to see what's going on with the board dynamics. And sometimes if there's nonprofits or interested stakeholders in the audience, we try to connect with them and try to inform them about the neighborhood councils. We understand that it's a big, large task asking neighborhood council, folks who aren't getting paid to do big outreach all the time. So we try to assist them in that. But on the day-to-day level, we try to be there for their. We try to be there at their meetings, but also between that, there's always committee meetings that's out there. There's also other opportunities to get involved as well. And we try to be connectors of conduits of information and connectors of services for the neighborhood councils. And some ways that we try to do that is that in addition to just going to attending the meetings, there are different types of liaisons that neighborhood councils could be. You could be homeless liaison from your council, and that we also provide homeless a lot. For example, homelessness is a big issue right now. So we help create what's called a homeless alliance, and we ask neighborhood council folks to appoint someone from the board as their homelessness liaison, and they'll come to the meetings and learn meet the city services that's out there, and pass that information on to. They'll come to the meeting, take that information, pass it to the board, and the board ideally will pass that to their stakeholders. So we kind of help broker those type of deals there. Yeah.
That's cool. So the information passes from City of LA or from you down to the neighborhood council. They do whatever, or find the information you want and pass it back up to you guys? Is that kind of how that works?
Well,
Or?
pass it back to us. And I think ideally is that once the neighbor councils get that information, they can pass it to the stakeholders, get the stakeholders' feedback, and then take that feedback and kind of direct it to the city departments and maybe the council that needs to hear it. Yeah.
Okay, directly to the department or the person, not through you guys, back through you guys. Okay, got it. Okay, that's interesting. So, so do the board members get paid big salaries to do this?
Oh, all the time, right? They get their own car, their own personal jet, And
good to know. No wonder they're dying to serve.
No, I do. One thing I'm really impressed with, and I just thank Pamela for being here, is that one thing I've noticed in these 18 years is, people don't always get along. It's messy. Let's be honest, right? But the reality is, I've really found out is that people do care about their communities.
Right.
They want to do good for their communities, and they're not getting paid for it, right? The challenge is, how do you define good? What is the public good, right? And that's where the spirited conversation could come in. But at the end of the day, these are unpaid. I don't want to say the term volunteer, because I think neighborhood councils are a lot more than that.
More than a volunteer.
There's more than volunteer, and this is not to knock on, hey, volunteer to go to the food bank, or you're volunteer to go, go read a book to the schools. And those are all noble. They still, when I say volunteers, that you're part of the city once you become a neighborhood council board member, right? Mm-hmm. And then whether you're a citizen or not, and you're elected, appointed by you serve a constituency, And I think that's why when you say I can't say the term volunteer. So I think that's pretty important. They don't get paid, no.
Right.
But what we have seen, right? We'll transition to to
yes.
What I have seen though is that a lot of we're starting to see that. The neighborhood council folks are taking elected offices. The city controller was a former neighborhood council board member. The council district 13 in the northeast is a former board member. Councilman in the CD4 was a former board member as well. So we see that people are using. This is an opportunity for more, shall we say, a training ground for more better civic engagement.
Mm-hmm. So that brings me to that. So training-wise, you mentioned that your office provides training for these councils to, I'm assuming, like even just parliamentary procedure, or maybe how a board should operate. Is it that kind of thing, or what types of training? If someone decided to join a neighborhood council or thinks they want to, what kind of training do you provide?
I've been talking too much, but I'll let Pam.
We're getting to Pam. Don't worry.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me do it. Well, we provide provide trainings such as kind of a lot of times. Sometimes when neighborhood councils join, board members join the board, it can be simple something as the funding training. That we work down the funding department. There's a separate department now that does the funding program, but we do a little of the funding kind of breakdowns. We have trainings on 7 things you need to know as a board member. Some of the rules of the game. As neighborhood councils, there's we're not legal experts, but there's some quick hits. There's a city attorney legal advice division that helps neighborhood councils and come to conflict of interest issues. And we do trainings in terms of technical assistance, like sometimes like the bylaws training, some outreach, sometimes meeting facilitation, all that. What we found out is that at the board meeting, it's not enough time for sometimes the board members to get to know each other. And the neighborhood councils themselves, or sometimes on a Saturday or a different day, will have what's called a board retreat. And when they do a little bit more strategic planning, we're there to facilitate more strategic planning, more kind of more technical assistance training, more like, hey, how do you work with city departments? Those type of training as well.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you, Tom. We're going to switch over to Pamela now. I'm just going to turn. Okay. I was getting echo. Sorry about that. So Pamela, we've invited you here because theory is theory, government's government, but we want to find out from a real citizen, a real live person, how it is to be chair of the Harbor Gateway North Neighborhood Council, and kind of how did you come about getting into this, and was there an election? What did you go through to get on the board, and then what are you experiencing as a board member and chairperson, what are you experiencing as the kind of the results or the impact that you're having on your neighborhood? I'm assuming that's why you joined. So if you could share a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. Where I grew up is actually the unincorporated area of Los Angeles County. So when I bought my home in the city of Los Angeles. And what I didn't know, which I learned later, is the neighborhood has their own neighborhood association that's very active. From that, I was approached by someone that they thought that I should run to be on the neighborhood council to participate on that level. And my mother also encouraged me to participate. So what that means is that at the time it was time for elections, they needed a vice chair on the neighborhood council. The seat was vacant. So I ran unopposed for the neighborhood council vice chair seat at that time. That was back in 2012. I served in that seat for 2 terms. And toward the end of my term, the president or the chair at the time resigned. And then so I acted as the chair of the neighborhood council for just shy of 6 months. And then I ran for the actual chair seat. So I've been in the seat now. Would be the end of my term, which is 2 years. But we have a special situation this year where there's an extension for our term to be that it will extend into 2019.
We don't want to let her leave.
Yes.
So you created a special situation where she couldn't leave.
So that's true for our area.
Everybody.
South City. The city is, because what Thomas maybe didn't explain was that the city clerk runs the neighborhood council's, elections, just like any other election. So they wanted us to be in alignment with the fall elections.
Yeah, when we first started, we were city clerk. Now,
right,
yeah,
right. So it's pretty involved. So some people think that by serving on the neighborhood council is volunteer. It extends more than that, because this is a job in the extent that you are representing your constituency or our stakeholders. We have ethical obligations. We are Department of Neighborhood Empowerment handles the governance, but also the city attorney. There's a city attorney's branch that is allocated to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and works jointly with us. So if there is any potential conflict of interest or a question of anything that a board member is doing that may be considered a conflict of interest, we have the ability to seek out legal counsel. So therefore, all of that can be vetted. So there's no surprise or any hiccups that may come along because we've misstepped. So we have a lot of training, and these are required trainings. It's not voluntarily to go or not. We are obligated to do ethical training, code of ethics, anti-bullying training, in addition to the funding training. And the funding is, how do we manage the money? We can't just give money just because someone requests it. It has to have certain guidelines. They need to follow within the strategic plan of our neighborhood council. What we as a neighborhood council are advocating for, what they're asking money for, is in alignment with our strategic plan. And then how will it best represent our constituents or our stakeholders? So all of that has to be vetted. We have a lot of passion about how we use our money. And oftentimes we have to really oversee that in a very, uniform way, because people say that there's favoritism and all that. So we make sure that we roll out the call for applications at a certain time of the year. We receive them. The committee, myself and the executive committee, we go through that, and then we figure out what will be best served for that particular board term. So I've been involved pretty much since 2012 actively. But I have a really good board. There are a lot of founding members of the formation committee for the neighborhood council that still serve on the board. So now it's time, because of age and health problems and other commitments, that some of those folks will not be able to serve. So the next 6 months will be a challenge, and that I'll have to be doing some really good, great outreach to let people know that we need people to help to serve and to run for the seats that are coming up.
And how do you plan to do that, or how does your board plan to do that?
Well, this coming up at our next board meeting, I have that as an agenda item. I want to roll out kind of like a road show with certain neighborhood council members or the executive board, if necessary, to come up with a plan of how we're going to outreach. So I think we are at a time in our country now where we see that the youth are really advocating for what they believe in.
Yeah.
We've always tried to engage our youth, but I think we have to take a deeper dive. And I want that like within the next 30 days and kind of use this as a platform to get our youth advocates involved, because the city of Los Angeles, through the mayor's office and through Dunn, they have a really great program, mentorship and training for our youth in the city. And this is another way that they can be civically engaged, learn about the city of Los Angeles politics, and then also serve their specific community. And we can have more youth involved on the neighborhood council. We wouldn't have a potential gap in a seat, because there would be easy transition for those students that are college students and become homeowners, and they have stable jobs, that they can still remain civically engaged. And that's the focus, that I want to do a road show so we can start outreaching to a lot of community groups.
It was announced here. It was announced here first.
Yes, that's right. Because
this is the beginning of the road show.
Join.
We need to do that. Yeah.
Can I chat?
Yes.
When I first started the conversation of this chat, I said the way the neighborhood council system got started with people were not happy with the way things were.
Uh-huh.
I think that with the youth, this is an opportunity to engage them. In my other hat, also besides overseeing the South LA Harbor team, in our department, our team is charged with doing outreach citywide for the upcoming elections, just outreach in general. And 2019, as Pamela mentioned, in 2019. But what we're finding out is that you have to start outreach not 3 months before the election. You got to start right now. And what that means is that we have to get more awareness out there. So right now, the push is to do more awareness. So what are neighborhood councils, right? What's the power of neighborhood councils? And then definitely we want to support the neighborhood councils in in recruiting more folks to get involved.
Right.
Thank you.
So, Pam, on your board, do you have particular jobs on each seat? Is each seat like a designated chairperson, like the league has our portfolios of environment and education and medical? Is it sort of set up like that?
Similar. So we are a 17-seat board, and within the 17 seats, there's one representative per district, and that's a district within our geographical boundary. We have 8 districts. So there's one district rep from district 1 through 8 that serves on the board. And then we also have a outreach person, we have the finance person, the vice chair, the chair, we have a youth advocate, and we have a community organization rep. So all of those bodies have a specific interest within the neighborhood council. A lot of times each district rep also may serve within a neighborhood watch or a block club,
Mm.
and they serve as the representative of the city, so to speak. And so collectively, we can work together to meet the needs. Because I always say, even though we're in a certain community or neighborhood council boundary, every district is very unique. There are certain issues that come up in District 1 in our area versus District 8 that are totally night and day.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone now is experiencing problems with homelessness throughout the county of Los Angeles. But there were some areas within our boundary where that had always been a concern.
Mm.
And that was because the community was specifically around the freeways.
Mm.
So you had the Caltrans right of way, and then you have the city boundary, and within that you had an area where people could um, take shelter, and then became what we were told a public nuisance. And
Mm.
how to deal with that, because there's illegal dumping, there may be pest issues because of people having trash and debris, then the city services aren't there, so the complaints are. And so how do you leverage that? But those are still humans that are there, so you have to empathize and then come up with a way. It's not just calling and saying have that encampment removed.
Right.
We still have to address the person that's there. Do they need city services? Did they have someone that came out to outreach to them and they refuse services?
Mm.
Or is it just that they don't know what to do?
Mm.
So all of those things are right in our backyard, and this is a platform for us to utilize the different resources that we are here to provide through outreach.
Mm.
The mayor has several initiatives, under his leadership. The homelessness one has been big for the past 2 or 3 years, so it's not new. Um, it's always been an area of focus. But how do we engage on a neighborhood council level to meet the needs where we are? And then how do we utilize our monies to maybe make a dent in whatever we can do? This is a huge issue. But on a local level, what we've done in our neighborhood council, we've outreach to the youth. So our youth advocate has communicated with all the schools within our neighborhood council boundary. They have identified who are the homeless students by definition
Mm.
that are in the school system that have needs.
Mm.
So what we've done is we've provided backpacks with toiletries that
Mm.
we fill and we provide to the schools. We're not allowed to be in direct contact with the children, of course, but we outreach to the administrators of the school, the principal or the parent um, administrator, and we let them know what we wanted to do, and they partnered with us to create this program that we do. So this is the second year that we've done it, and we use some of our city funds for that. So a little step, but we're doing something
Mm.
on our level to address the homeless in our area, because the youth, there are a lot of homeless youth. There are a lot of them. And even though they go to school, they still don't have a permanent home, or they're living on someone's sofa. That's still homeless, right?
Right.
So it's a issue. But that's what we've done on our neighborhood council.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So the money is put in the hands at a micro level so that you can do direct good as opposed to putting in a requisition and it trickles down eventually. This
Right.
seems like it would you'd be able to take action faster the way they've got this set up with the funds that they give you, right? It's quicker to take action, maybe.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that neighborhood councils, this is a great program, right? So when we ask for neighborhood councils, they're not allowed to just give away. Pamela mentioned backpacks, so we ask that the neighborhood councils put their logo on there, so as a form of outreach. So just make sure that it's not so much they could just come in and just give monies away like
Right.
that. So
Everything that we do is in the bucket of the outreach umbrella.
Right. Okay.
That's where all the monies go.
and the logo has to be on that
Right.
those items.
So we're advocating, we're providing education, and we're promoting civic engagement.
Yeah.
So those are the
Very cool.
three pillars, I should say.
So Pam, could you describe to us just quickly some of the other things that your council has done over the last 12 months? And maybe if you have an idea of what you have planned for the next 12 months, because I think I was surprised to hear what the wide variety of things you had: the electric car, the electric vehicle awareness day. I mean, there's just so many diverse things that you do. Can you share some of those things that your council's done?
Sure. We are an award-winning neighborhood council. I want to say that, right?
Yes.
We've won several awards in Power.
I bet you have.
So under the leadership of our Mrs. Deborah Lee, she's created an emergency preparedness outreach program for our neighborhood council system. So we do CERT trainings, and we've done several of the CERT trainings and get people trained by the fire department and certified to provide basic needs to their street or neighbors in the event of an emergency. And we had a huge rollout of outreach for that. In addition to, we handed out bags that had information in it about having an emergency plan, what you should do. And the next step is to map the neighborhood. So for us to understand who has special needs,
Wow.
find who would be the team captain in the event of an emergency. How would you, just put everything and really implement the big emergency plan. So we're award winning for that. We also have won several large wins with land use or development projects that have been proposed in our neighborhood council boundaries. And we've been very influential with the planning department, the planning commission, the mayor's office, as well as our council member, of giving our voice to why we are for or against a particular development project. So we've had two projects specifically, one pending, that we currently are advocating against for various reasons. So we've been very engaged with that. The residents of the particular area, the one we're involved with now, they're very engaged, very educated about the planning and the environmental concerns. And that's one thing under my leadership. I want people to be able to understand and to speak the language. So when you go to a council meeting or you speak to your local elected official, you're just not considered a complainer. You can speak the language and explain why and give recommendations versus just complaining that you don't want it. So
Right.
that's that our stakeholders have been very, very good at really taking the ball and rolling with it and really engaging their neighbors and getting them to come out, sign petitions. We've had a protest about one development project that was organized by a stakeholder, not from the neighborhood council, because we can't do that because we're an arm of the city, but as a stakeholder. The stakeholders have gotten together and been civically engaged and used their voice to advocate for something that they did not approve of. So we've been very influential with that. So that's a win. And that was this year.
Yeah, wow.
The National Drive Electric Week Day we did back in September, which is something that I spearheaded in because our area, we're adjacent to the South Bay.
Right.
We are considered a disadvantaged community because we have poor air quality. We're right up against all the oil refineries. We've had several explosions and some other things that have happened. So whatever we can do to educate the public about other alternative ways to reduce our carbon footprint. I'm an advocate for that. And so the National Drive Electric Week was one of the first that we've had in our area. Watts did theirs, but on our side, on the Harbor Gateway side, this was the first time that that had ever happened. So I was happy that we had a good turnout, and the dealerships were very helpful with giving us a great display of vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
And
was awesome.
yes, so
Okay.
thank you. And what else have we done? We've done emergency preparedness, land use. We're getting into sustainable things with the Drive Week, and then also we are advocating for our youth and for cultural resources or um, different activities for our youth in the area.
Mm.
So we have some activities that are currently being planned. We try to, like tomorrow, we're judges at 135th Street School for an art project. So there's 5 judges from the neighborhood council are participating in that activity. And we also do some health fairs and educational forums for um, advocacy for, I guess, doing better with your health and preventative health with lupus, sickle cell, and cancer.
Oh, wow.
So,
And so do you have much interaction with LAUSD then, or do they approach you? Do you approach them? Because I think the, Harbor Gateway is part of Gardena, or it's physically there, but it's not Gardena schools because it's LA, right? So they have LAU, is that right?
that's correct. So our area is unique because we are the city of Los Angeles. One side of the street is unincorporated LA County. On like Vermont side, it's also true going down Figueroa and up 120th. So we have unincorporated Los Angeles County. We have the city of Gardena, and then we have just a tad bit of Torrance, but we kind of cut off for our jurisdiction there. So the city of Los Angeles on our side, we only have one city building, and that is the Boys and Girls Club, and that's where our office is housed, but it's not large enough for us to have meetings that we facilitate. So we utilize 135th Street School as our base, and that's where we have most of our meetings in the school auditorium. So we are definitely involved with LA Unified School District because they do support what we do, and we in turn support the schools.
Okay.
And we have one large charter school too that's not within LA Unified. It's the environmental charter school.
Oh.
Which is a very large school of middle to high school students.
Mm. And what do you foresee for the upcoming 12 months for your council?
Upcoming 12 months, well, our strategic plan meeting is in June the 9th to be exact. So that's when we'll plan for the next board term.
Well, it sounds like you guys got a lot of stuff going on, or good stuff going on.
Yeah, we have, we might be able to pick up some new things. I'm hoping so. I want us to be more engaged at a higher level. I always say, doing a community cleanup is good, and being civically engaged is good. There's some other things that we can advocate for too. Economic development and employment is a huge issue. We are a stone throw away from the port of Los Angeles, San Pedro. There's a lot of things going on there that directly impact us, as well as the expansion of LAX and the monetization project. Even though we're not in Inglewood, we have the Ram Stadium being built. So we're at all of those things, and the expansion of Metro affects that. So we're right in the middle of all of this activity. It's a lot of activity going on, and all of it is potentially gonna affect our climate and air quality. And that's a huge focus that we should be really pinpointing how we can have a voice to that.
Well, the stakeholders know this is going on, right? You could be the education arm to the community for that.
Yes.
So Pam, just to wrap up, I have a question. How old do you have to be, or how young can you be to serve on the board?
Well, we just did a bylaws amendment change.
I think the question is that it depends on the board.
Yeah, I think
How about for yours?
16 got voted down.
Okay, so what do you guys?
I think it's 17.
17.
17.
So hopefully the people out there hear that if they know some maybe high school seniors that want to get involved and are passionate about the environment,
Right.
that they should contact you. So, if a resident wants to find out more about the neighborhood council and yours in particular, Pam, how would they contact you, or how do they find out?
You can go to our website, harborgatewaynorth.org. We're on Twitter. HGNNC is our hashtag. And we also are on Facebook, Harbor Gateway North Neighborhood Council.
Okay.
So social media presence, Empower LA. Also,
that's our website, powerla.org.
And there's a link to all the neighborhood councils on the Empower LA.org website and social media. City of LA has great social media.
Yeah.
Great social media.
Maybe you need a social media chair on your board.
The the outreach person / community, that is what they do.
Okay, got it.
That is what they do.
Well, let me ask Pam, thank you so much for this opportunity, Athena. Let me ask you, Pam.
Yes.
Time commitment wise. So you just come and show up to the meetings, right? You don't have to do 1 hour a month?
No, it's pretty. I monitor emails, but luckily I have a lot of retired board members, so they play a great behind the scenes role, and they vet a lot of emails or issues that come up. But the commitment is pretty. It's like a part-time job.
That's what we have. I think that's the expectation. We have to let folks know that if you want to join the board, it's rolling up your sleeves and actually doing some work.
Yeah, not just the board meeting, but outside. So how many hours do you think, Pam, forget the board meeting, outside the board meeting and your different activities, and maybe there's subcommittees, what should someone expect to spend time-wise in serving?
Realistically, I would say at least 10 hours a week at a minimum.
Yeah, well, I think it's for more.
That's for me. I would but I would say at least a couple of hours a week.
Okay.
And I say that it could be more.
Yeah,
so really, because I'm a working person, but I could stay here at City Hall all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's always a city department or a meeting or something of significance to attend. But if you have an active board and everybody has a role and everybody does their part, then you have the representation with the city departments at the various meetings throughout the city of Los Angeles. And it makes a huge difference to have that presence, because when you see an elected official, they know, oh, you're from Harbor Gateway North. Yeah, we got your community impact statements, and we didn't talk about that. But we as a neighborhood council we have the ability to give public comment through a written form on active council files.
Oh, wow.
And so we send in our written recommendation based on the board vote, and that is uploaded to that council file. So when our council member goes into the system, all of that information is downloaded, and he sees which neighborhood councils have weighed in and what the positions are. And I can go to that actual meeting, and they allow me, was it 5 minutes? Up to 5 minutes as the neighborhood council representative to speak to that agenda item.
And then only neighborhood councils are able to provide their position onto council files.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's if we've taken a formal position.
Right. We
have to have taken a formal position, and that is on file and of record. But it speaks to the point that we have really active ability to be civically engaged. If you can take it as little as you want or more detailed as you want based on your time or what your neighborhood council wants to do as a board.
Right.
Mhm.
Because it's all supposed to be representative of the board's perspective, not as an individual
Yeah.
person. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because if a person does that, they're misrepresenting.
Yeah.
And we don't want that to happen. So.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're a big power for your actual council person, because Los Angeles is so huge and spread out. If people, a lot of people who don't live here don't realize it, but it's just a huge territory from San Fernando. Is Pacoima part of Los Angeles? I think. I mean, it's hugely spread out, right? So I would think that this helps your council person drill down quickly as to how people feel on something versus having to travel over and over to get people's opinion, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Makes them more effective, I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you
Correct.
get heard better, I would assume.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, guys. Believe it or not, we've run out of time.
Oh.
Can we do it again?
Thank you. I was like, hello. Thank you for joining me. This has been awesome. Hopefully we'll see you soon again. Maybe you can do a follow-up with us at a later time. But again, Pamela Thornton from the Neighborhood Harbor Gateway North Neighborhood Council. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And from Empower LA, we have Tom Song. Thanks for joining us and making this such a great conversation. I just have one little message. Next week, we'll be joined on Wednesday by Rebecca Poirier, who's the city clerk for the city of Torrance, who will explain how to throw your hat in the ring and run for local office, elected office. And then, because of a reschedule, we, the very next day, have Thursday, Mark Warnick, who's a city council person in Lomita, who will share with us what you experience when you want to run for city council, the steps, the money, and most importantly from him is how it is to serve on a city council that has a rotating mayorship, which is different from City of Torrance and a lot of cities. So that'll be really interesting to hear. Both of those conversations will start at 4:30 next Wednesday and then next Thursday. And then if you want to join our mailing list, the easiest way is to text 444-999, and in the message, put your email address and keyword LWVTA, and you'll automatically be added to our mailing list. So thank you again for joining me, guys. I love the conversation. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.